what I love is talking about you. You're a straight shooter. And I've had a lot of straight shooters here on the Andrew Eborn show talking about Nigel Farage. And he's now become quite a divisive figure, if you like. There's a lot of tension, particularly between Nigel Farage at the moment and Rupert Lowe. Some see it as a clash of styles, Farage populism versus Lowe's more measured approach. How do you view their dynamic, and does it strengthen or challenge the party?
Oh, look, I don't think there's any particular tension in reform as a whole. People say two things. First of all, they say we're divided. Well, we're not. One man is criticising Nigel Farage. We're certainly not divided. We've had 1,000 new members since the spat started. We're at the top of the polls. We've got a full slate of council candidates. So I don't think you could say that it's had a particularly adverse impact on reform. There will always be disagreements in political parties. And if anybody expected reform to get away with not having that, then that was just naivety. We were always going to have that. We are always going to have it. We will have it again during the course of this parliament. There will be, bumps in the road. There always are. But I am a great believer that those disagreements, which will occur, should happen behind closed doors. And if ever I've had any problem with anything that anybody's been saying in reform, I have resolved that behind closed doors. And I think that is the key. And when people go public, I do lose sympathy.
Yeah, and I have to say I agree with you. And so some would say that, well, that's what Rupert's tried to do. He's very publicly, it's an interesting way of saying it, publicly told people he wants to do it behind closed doors. He's invited Nigel to dinner. Do you think Nigel should accept that invitation?
Well, they did meet. I mean, they haven't met since the spat began, but they did meet a couple of months ago, and they did have apparently a 45-minute conversation. So I don't think you can say that Nigel hasn't, listened to Rupert. But I mean, there is always a point when you can't go any further. You are just at a point of disagreement. Now, if you think of the Tory party, what happens when there's a disagreement there? Well, they all put in letters to the 1922 committee, and they fill the press and media with speculation as to how many letters have gone in and how many are about to go in. And then you look at the Labour Party and you think of the terrible divisions that there were in the Corbyn era over the split between the left and the right, which hasn't been fully resolved. Actually, ours looks pretty trivial by comparison.
Well, and we say trivial, and Rupert's not alone, though. I mean, Ben Habib, who's also been very vocal, he's been on the Andrew Eborn show several times. He says that Nigel's not fit to do the job. It's just all about ego with Nigel. He's going back on some of the core values. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, nobody's going back on any core values. I don't know a single core value that Nigel's rode back on. But the second thing is, I ask anybody to believe that without Nigel Farage, reform would be where it is now. In the interim, between it ceasing to be the Brexit Party and Nigel returning to lead reform, in that interim, we were run very competently and very well by Richard Tyson. But when Nigel came back, and he inherited a good setup from Richard, when Nigel came back, woof, suddenly we had the members. Suddenly we had the huge rallies. Suddenly we had the big donors, because he is very charismatic. And we need Nigel Farage. And without Nigel Farage, reform wouldn't be reform.